Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the California Community College's Vision for Success Virtual Summit Series. Today's topic is using funding structures to drive equity-centered student success. I am Dr. Ciria Martinez, Assistant Vice Chancellor of Student Equity and Success, and it is my pleasure to continue to collaborate with my colleagues at the Chancellor's Office and our external partners to put this series together for all of you. So just a reminder that our goal for this series is to help our colleges take action to lead our commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and anti-racism, and centering students to move our system into the future and realize the vision for success. So before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that you have access to live captioning. You just have to click on the live caption tab. Also, you can engage with us by using the Q&A chat box, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible during the live session. And we'll also select a few of those questions to ask our panelists at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, this is what our time together looks like today. Today's webinar will commence with an introduction and context setting by Dr. Kendrick Murillo. Dr. Murillo will be followed by our distinguished panel of leaders who will synthesize the theme for today on how to improve financial structures as powerful tools to support student success and to close equity gaps, certainly the foundation of the vision for success. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I am beaming with joy to see one of my former students, Ms. Yvonne Munoz, as part of this panel. She is a proud alumna of the California Community College system, so I welcome Yvonne today. Lastly, we will have time at the end for Q&A, and this will be moderated again by Dr. Murillo. We will end with my closing remarks and instructions on how to transition to our networking time. So again, thank you, and without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Kendrick Murillo.
Good afternoon. So it's a big honor to be here with you today to help moderate our session and work with this group of committed equity leaders. As a bit of a reminder, and Dr. Martinez did a good job of noting this, we are talking about using funding structures to drive equity-centered student success. There were two changes to funding structures to incentivize colleges to directly connect budgets to student outcomes, evolve from silos to integrate funding strategies, and we hopefully enable colleges to focus relentlessly on student end goals. These two changes were the student-centered funding formula, which was established in 2018-19 in the budget bill, and it's been in operation now for a couple of years. We also had in 2018, the C program was established and merged 3 funding sources. This all in the effort to provide access, equity, and success for all of our students. And one of the most notable and important things that we'll be talking about is driving toward the vision for success and achieving the goals that we set for completion, transfer, ensuring that we're decreasing the number of units for our students, making sure that our students are gainfully employed in their field of study, reducing equity gaps, and reducing regional gaps. So with that, basically going to start turning over to our speakers, their presentations. We did ask our speakers to address some of the following questions, which I'll give to you so you can think about them as they're going through. Is how has your college or district moved from siloed budgets to integrated funding strategies? What has been one of your biggest challenges in shifting funding structures to enable your college district to focus on student end goals? How has the pandemic impacted your approach to planning future funding structures for equity-centered student success? What do you want the new normal? I don't even use the word normal. I call it our new reality, post-pandemic recovery to look like? And what advice do you have for our attendees on how they can maximize their funding structures to drive equity-centered student success and the vision for success? So starting off, as we noted, the student-centered funding formula, we will have the student-centered funding formula presentation by Dr. Joe Weiss, Superintendent President of Shasta College since 2011, and he will address how Shasta has been maximizing the student-centered funding formula and guiding students successfully through financial aid. And Yvonne Munoz, Higher Education Senior Policy Analyst at Education Trust West, looking at the key data points in how Shasta College's efforts at improving services and offerings. I think that was supposed to be Santa Rosa College, so I apologize. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Weiss.
Well, thank you, Kindred. Kindred and I go back to being fellow students in a doctoral program, and so it's fun to see you today. So yeah, you can start with the next slide, and just a 15-second background. If you're not familiar with far northern California, that part of California above Sacramento, Shasta serves 3 counties there, total population of around 250 to 60,000 people. One of the things that's been driving some of our planning has been in looking at our region. About 31% of adults have some college and no degree, and that compares statewide. It's a kind of opposite of these numbers. Statewide is closer to 21% or 22% have some college and no degree. So we're in an area where a lot of people started but haven't finished. And then a lower degree attainment rate than the state average, 19% versus, it's closer to 32% statewide. So that's a little bit about our service area. Next slide. And so kind of as I was thinking about preparing for sharing a little bit of a few very specific efforts we've done, just in general, I was thinking how hard it's been to predict funding and manage ourselves fiscally under the last few years, and then just the craziness of the last 18 months, or, well, I guess it's really for us, it's the last 3 years with the starts of the major fires up here. But a lot of these efforts I'm talking to you about are paying dividends now because we started prior to even a new student-centered funding formula. Our core belief is keeping the students' best interests in mind at the core of our decision making. And I personally believe when you do that and you make their success your focus, it makes the right things happen over time for you fiscally. So next slide, please. So a little bit about Shasta College. Like everyone else, almost, we're struggling to maintain enrollment levels. One of the ways we went into and kind of helped stabilize our enrollment was we went a little heavier into dual enrollment back in 15-16. And we've built that program up to now around 2,500 high school students, which is pretty major for a college our size of about 7,000 FTEs, and it's generating around 250 to 300 full-time equivalent students of funding a year. And if you don't know, the dual enrollment students get the full funding level, the success and need metrics, since they don't apply for financial aid, they're carved out from that, and so it does provide kind of a stability in the funding level. The pandemic has, of course, exacerbated all of our enrollment issues, and then up here in the far north, some of our colleges are really struggling because of the major fires. Of course, some in the south too, right? And so it's heavy on all our minds right now of how to re-engage with our lost students. But if we can go to the next slide, I'll focus a little bit more on dual enrollment. So we're getting over 5,000 enrollments, so students taking more than one course at a time. And some of the key takeaways that I just want to point out, it makes sense intuitively that the dual enrollment students will have a head start when they come to college and hit key metrics more easily. And as we looked at that, nearly 16% complete 30+ units by the end of their first year, more than our traditional total student body. And so the Head Start is working and getting them to that momentum point of 30 units after 1 year of college, throwing in the little Head Start they received in high school. And then one of the things I really like what I found out in our recent study our research office did is that our dual enrollment students are completing transfer level math and English at about double the rate of our other students. And so some of that is because some of our courses are dual enrolled in math and English transfer level, English especially. But I think some of it is just because they're feeling comfortable in college when they come. That's my personal opinion there. Persistence, to me, this was really good, that they persist from fall to spring at about 86% compared to about 74% for our non-dual enrolled background students. And so, remember, correlation here, not necessarily causation, but and our younger students, right? So it's not just because they were dual enrolled, but we think that's a factor. Next slide. Then thinking about the supplemental metrics, the 20% funding, we've been tracking some of our efforts in financial aid since around 15, 16. 16, 17, we started automating our processing, and we were actually about a year ahead of that special funding the state gave our system. And you can see the numbers here, the Pell numbers rising in our students, and our total enrollment hasn't been going up, and a really dramatic rise in Promise students. Getting that Promise grant application automated really paid big dividends, and then the funding formula hit where it rewards you for more dollars for Promise and Pell students. I've heard some people say you can't manufacture Pell students, and in a way that's true, but you can help them complete the FAFSA at better rates. And you'll notice that little bump there at the bottom from 1819 to 1920 of about 400, about a 10% increase in Pell students. I just got that data last week, and I asked our financial aid director, what happened? Is that an error? And she reminded me that with the automation, we've been able to transition some of our financial aid staff to do more proactive outreach rather than trying to just stay caught up on processing. And so from that 1819 to 1920 year, we did a lot more outreach to new applicants to help them finish their FAFSAs. And we see the dividends coming in there for more students being eligible for Pell. Next slide, please. And then our success metrics, many of us have had a history over the past 5, 6, 7 years of different grants, and we've all had our equity and SSSP, now SEEP programs to really focus on additional student services. And so tracking our degrees, there's so many different ways to look at degrees and certificates, students getting multiple awards, all those sorts of things. So I asked our research to give me the numbers unique. So no duplication here. If they got an associate's degree here, they aren't counted as getting a certificate too, or they're not counted twice for 2 associate's degrees, that sort of thing. So you can see we've had a rise, even though, again, our student population, our head count is a little smaller over this time period, and our FTS is a little smaller. But we've had a good increase in this snapshot of looking at degrees and certificates, Chancellor's Office approved certificates granted annually. Little drop in 1920, but even comparing 1920 to 15-16, we've got a almost 14% increase. Next slide, please. So a couple of the special programs we've developed over the past 5 or so years, trying to reach that adult education, that adult population I was talking about with some college and no degree. We started what we call Accelerated College Education, ACE program, and the concept, as you can read there, is having 8-week block courses. So 8 weeks, a week off, and 8 weeks for the fall, same thing in the spring, and then 8 weeks in the summer. Have the students take 2 courses at a time, and some cohort-based support. So what we found, we've grown that program. We've had now 900 course enrollments, up from 300. 83% of those students are age 25 and older. So we are capturing in this program the older adult. Kind of the conceptual idea is invite them back to college to complete, but don't invite them back to the same thing the same way that they didn't finish last time. So idea with online and both face-to-face and hybrid courses, they know that it's only going to be Tuesday or Thursday evenings. They know that it's sequenced so they can complete our most popular degrees, business and psychology. And now we're expanding into some other areas. And so it's very focused for the students. A couple of really good numbers we found: 88% of these students are completing the FAFSA compared to about 50% of the general student population. 49% are first generation, higher than our current estimate of first generation of 33% overall. And course success rate, this is what excites me, is, and this is a little subtle, but 82.5% for ACE students, overall course success rate, compared to almost 77% for non-ACE students enrolled in the 8-week courses. We're open enrollment, right? So we'll have students who enroll in the 8-week courses, but they're not getting the extra support or in the cohort of the ACE program. But they're doing 4 percentage points nearly better than our district-wide average in success with the shortened courses. So part of the way we're thinking of coming back better from the pandemic is expanding our ACE offerings as we come back and plan to come back this coming year. Next slide. Degrees when due, you may be familiar with this. We piloted a couple of years ago in California, this concept, and now there's a number, I think 30 some colleges working on it. But the idea is we went back and looked at our students who left with no degree, but we looked at 45 units or more. We're working to engage those students, but we focused first on those with 60 units and a 2.0, but no degree. And we found 600 from recent years. And over the past 2 years, we've gotten 258 of those awarded degrees based. And when I say based on final semester of attendance, if they stopped coming in fall of 2017, and we realize, hey, you actually have this Associates of Business, we'll award it with a fall of 2017 when they stopped attending with us. So we're also looking at reverse transfer, where we'll bring back, if they went to a 4-year college, didn't get a degree there, and they're not enrolled in any college, looking at, can we transfer back some of that to finish an associate's degree to capture those students who left without one. Found 34 of 165 students evaluated where we could contact them and say, hey, you can have an associate's degree, you've earned it by transferring this credit back. So those are some of the concepts for degrees when due. And next slide. So this is my final slide, just some closing thoughts. Everything's been very challenging for all of us, but by, again, focusing in on student success as a core value and making changes to become more student-centered, improving our financial aid, all those sorts of things, we're seeing the dividends paid in some of our metrics in the funding formula. And then kind of a question that I don't have an answer to, and I think will be potentially a challenge coming out of this pandemic. As I think about the students we've lost, it seems to be our most vulnerable, lowest income students, and maybe a disproportionately higher number of those we've been focusing in on closing the equity gaps for. And so I don't know if I'm right on that, but it's my intuition, my gut instinct. And I don't want us to think, hey, we've been closing our equity gaps, when in reality, we've been closing them because we've lost those students. They're not enrolled the last couple of years because of the pandemic. So again, I don't have data on that yet, but it's an idea that I think is worth looking into. And I'm going to put in the chat here. Somehow I got muted. I'm going to put in the chat a link to a research report that gives more information on those special programs I was telling you about. And I think next slide, we can head to Yvonne. And yeah, I'll turn it over to Yvonne Munoz from the she's Higher Education Senior Policy Analyst with Education Trust West.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Weiss. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm very excited to be here with you all, though virtually, to discuss the topic at hand, which is leveraging the student-centered funding formula for equity. Go ahead and change the slide, please. Perfect. So for those of you who may not know us, the Education Trust West is a nonprofit educational equity organization which is focused on closing opportunity gaps from pre-K through higher education. And we work to close those gaps through our research, our data, our policy analysis, and advocacy. Next slide. Perfect. So before getting started, I wanted to quickly make you aware of a few resources. And the first that you see here is a piece that was written a few years ago during the initial development of the student-centered funding formula, which offered some guiding questions that are still helpful and relevant today. The second, there you go. The second one here offers a framework for goal setting, and I'll go into that piece in further detail within a few minutes. And lastly, the third, which is a new publication released by our DC office, and it provides a national overview and recommendations for improving the implementation of outcome-based funding models. I'll make sure to ask that these resources be shared with you all after our conversations today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Historically, and as we are acutely aware of, there are persistent and urgent disparities in higher ed. Within the community college system, we know that these inequities lie primarily in certificate, degree, and transfer attainment. And the student-centered funding formula established a new structure by which to advance racial and economic equity by prioritizing a student's journey into, but also through completion of their academic goals. And so we see that the student-centered funding formula offers campuses an opportunity to integrate equitable goals within their institutional planning in order for those goals to serve as a roadmap on leveraging campus resources, policies, and practices and ways to meet those objectives. I find it important to share that the goal setting process can facilitate several important functions as it can begin cross-campus conversations, communicate a coordinated vision, and shift campus cultures. Importantly, the goals identified should guide decision-making, strengthen a college's planning process, and allow for budgets to better align with strategies to serve students of color and low-income students. Setting goals will be especially important in the next few years, especially as, Dr. Weiss had mentioned, COVID-19 has exacerbated racial and economic disparities, and community colleges will serve as the primary vehicle for propelling students of color from low-income backgrounds back onto their academic trajectories and towards their objectives. And so to that end, we outlined a framework for developing goals that are both community-based and equity-minded. And this is with the aim of helping to align institutional planning with the student-centered funding formulas, student success outcomes in a way that meaningfully integrates stakeholder voice. And so the image that you see here, and I apologize for it being small, is part of a resource we designed to help folks posit questions around considerations in the development or revision stages of their campus goal setting activities. And so I'll go ahead and kind of walk you all through some of these principles and the rationale for why we would consider these principles important in your local goal setting processes for the end of closing those racial equity gaps. And so the first on the left-hand side that you see there is around accessibility and transparency. And so this really includes considering the question of how can colleges facilitate interest from stakeholders to become merely aware of goal-setting processes? Are we making information easily accessible to all members of the community, both in their ability to locate information, but also in the language used to describe what is occurring? The second, which you can see right there in the orange box, is an important one, right? Racial equity. And so we know closing longstanding racial equity gaps requires that we identify who our underserved populations are and that we keep equity at the forefront when setting these goals. We know that when we identify those student groups, we need a couple those targeted goals with targeted activities and interventions to support advancing the outcomes of those individual student communities. As we can all kind of agree with, we've attempted blanketed approaches in the past that haven't yielded the closing of those gaps that we would have hoped to have seen at this point. On the last aspect about this principle is considering what beliefs are we communicating about students' abilities. So are the goals your campus setting, are they asset-based, so demonstrating a belief that students can succeed, or are they deficit-oriented, reflecting low expectations? So these are important considerations with goals related to racial equity. The third is about stakeholder engagement. So as we all know, community colleges are here to serve their unique and individual communities. And each of our communities is different and has stakeholders who carry a wealth of expertise of how to improve institutional practice and policy, or who we can partner with to help us combine resources. And we often miss critical opportunities when we don't engage stakeholders. And this is particularly true for students. They are the experts of their own needs, and local industry partners in our area often know firsthand what occupational skills are in demand. Our community organizations hold a detailed understanding of the external services, both academic and non-academic, that are available to support our student success. And if there's been any time to demonstrate the need and robust power of stakeholder voices, it's definitely been in the last year. And then last principle that I'll orient myself around here for you all is around accountability. And so we know goal setting can be an effective and useful tool, but the process has to be paired with the opportunities to track progress. And so having a mechanism to evaluate strategies and activities can both inform how we revise our targets, shift our strategies, learn or share best practices, which is such an important way to communicate what is working for some students, and demonstrate concrete plans for meeting the objectives we aim to achieve. And so I hope that this framework offers you an additional resource to consider and to aid you in the important work of setting the vision for success at your local district and campuses. Next slide. And I think with that, I'll go ahead and here's my contact information if you all have any questions or would like to get in contact about any additional resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Weiss and Yvonne. Really appreciate your comments and the information that you put forward. So we're going to move now to Lee Collier, and she's going to talk to us about the C Success presentation around Santa Rosa Junior College. She's the Dean of Counseling and Student Success and is responsible for the C program oversight, counseling to the Transfer Center, and non-credit student services. This presentation will highlight some successful outcomes of the C program at Santa Rosa Junior College. Thanks, Lee. It's yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. So thank you for this opportunity to share what we have accomplished with Student Equity and Achievement Program, or we all call it C program, at Santa Rosa Junior College. Next slide, please. Just a very brief history and how these programs resided in our college historically. And y'all know back in the 1990s, there was a matric program. At that time, that program was supposed to support certain functions within student services. So that program was resided in student services at that time. And the next comes to the Basic Skill Initiative for basic skills instruction, and that program at our college resided with academic affairs. And then in 2012, this program of a matric morphed into Triple SP program with a little different kind of functions and focusing on certain functions of matriculation and student journey, and placing a lot of focus on counseling and education planning. And we were able to use that program to hire a lot of counselors to help with those functions. And the following year, student equity came alive. At that time, Chairperson P was solely still resided in student services, but student equity gave us the opportunity to collaborate across the district in multiple departments to provide students both academic and student service support. So that was the beginning of our tighter collaboration and coordination at our college. Then in 2018, when Student Equity Achievement, the C program was established, we formally considered how to merge these three programs and pivot our existing programs and projects towards how to support the C program requirements, how to support student equity access and equity successful in general. So the next slide will show you just basically what we did in 18-19. That was the first year establishment. We did a lot of preparation work. We did a lot of collaboration, and we tried to establish what our integrated goals will be. We know that a C program has its own state metrics that we need to measure, but we also established 3 pillars for our locally based on our P group. A lot of you probably have heard student success redefined. There are 6 factors for student success, and we developed that into a 3-pillar kind of structure for invited, welcomed, for students to feel guided and supported, and engaged and empowered. And we believe these 3 pillars will support teaching and learning in general, and eventually lead students to succeed to success and completion. And we also re-examined this leadership structure for these 3 programs. We established a leadership structure. I'm responsible for the overall C program oversight, but also collaborate and coordinate with multiple deans across the district. We'll also have a integrated student success committee that is a very large committee, over 30 members across multiple departments, and we meet regularly to discuss what our equity plan should be, what our goals should be, and how we achieve it. So then in 1920, we formally merged these programs, budget, planning, everything is there. And in the from the beginning, we are very big on the transparency, because people want to know the 3 programs combined is a multi-million-dollar funding. How are we spending this? What are our priorities? So the C program link here can take you briefly to the website that we have set up for the C program. Krista, do you think we can do that? So I'll just briefly show you what that website looks like. Then maybe we have a little technical difficulty there, so I can drop in that link in the chat later. So in that program, you can see in our website, you can see that we have grouped our all the initiatives that supported by those formerly 3 separate programs into 6 categories in terms of how we support instructional and how do we provide additional student services, how do we integrate, how do we coordinate. So these are priorities are all aligned with the student equity plan, aligned with our district strategic goals. And we're also very heavy on the research and evaluation, because from the get-go, when Chairperson P was first started and followed by student equity plan, we wanted to know how we are doing. So I worked very closely with our research office, and we had built up some foundation how to measure how we're doing in terms of how these programs support longitudinally, how we are improving matric services, whether they have any impact on equity, and what are the disproportionate impact, where do they exist, and so on. So we had that foundation, and it's further expanded to measure C program, not only the metrics from the state, but also these are 3 metrics, the 3 pillars that I just mentioned to you. Next, please. So here are some highlights I can share with you what the C program's impact is at our college. Year over year, we have seen the C program have impact to a lot of students, and we have a significantly higher persistence for students participating in C programs compared to the district average. 24% for fall to spring persistence, and that has been pretty stable for the last few years. Next, please. On the matriculation services, which is still a heavy, big element within the C program, as you can see, we measure what the percentage of students receive these matric services. And one remarkable thing I can share with you on the continuing students having planned the last one, at the beginning of ICP program, we were only at 43%. And over the years, we increased to 70, 80, and now we are stable at about 95%. Continuing students now have education plan. And that reflects the efforts that we have done in strengthening counseling department and reaching out to students to help them map out their educational journey. Next, please. Also, we are measuring whether C program has impact on course success. And as you can see, the orange ones, which represents students' impact by C program, and we can dive into the data in the student demographics to see whether we have any impact in the equity measures. And you can see we consistently perform higher than the district average. Next, please. Also, we recognize a lot of student barriers are outside of classrooms. So one of the big programs that we have supported with C, and in combination with the CalFresh and other program fundings, we've been increasing the basic resources, food, transportation, some housing assistance, and other assistance that the students ask for, that whatever we can do, supplies and technologies, and we will help these students with. So this is several shots of the photos we have for the basic skills. And there are a few programs I would like to highlight as well at our college. One of them is Dream Center. We established that Dream Center very early on when the student equity funding came. We recognize undocumented students need help, and they need confidential, they need a safe space. So we created this Dream Center in 2015, and in a couple of years later, we have established a partnership with a private legal services, and they use our space and they provide our students with free legal services right there. The other big programs that we support is the student success peer coaching. It started with one of our campuses in Petaluma. We have a very visionary leader there that is brought up the student success peer coaching based on building peer relationship to help students going through the matric steps, and help them retain and refer them to resources whenever they need. And that program starting 2017 has been very successful. So by the time we wanted to increase and scale it up to the whole district, we're tight in the C program funding. So we went out for the Innovation Award grant from the CO. We got awarded in 2019. Now the entire district has student success peer coaches that help students to go through these services, and has been showing really great results. Next program is about supporting re-entry students. And in that, the re-entry, I mean the students that are formerly incarcerated. They join us in the college for a second chance program. And the one on the left side is our counselor dedicated for that program. And the student you see wearing the cap there, that was back in 2019 when she graduated from our college and then moved on to Sonoma State transfer. And she's now graduating from that university and going to move on to master's degree. So we have quite a bit of success stories like that. And we also have another program we call the Ignite program that provides education opportunities to the jail facilities. And we have started that a couple of years ago. And the C program provides a faculty coordinating and a supplies and other things to these students as well. Next program. Next is the program improvement. That, as I mentioned earlier, we always want to see what our programs are effective. So I know this shot's a little small, especially on the right-hand side, but that's giving you a kind of a glimpse into what we do. So for each of those programs that are C funded, we ask these projects to review annually who they serve, how many students they serve, what are the outcomes in terms of course success, retention, persistence, and so on, and where do disproportionate impact exist? And if they do, then we measure also, do we make progress towards that goal? And next, please. And I will be remiss if I don't mention any challenges. We do have challenges, especially as many of you know, the C program funding after these programs combined, the program funding overall has been flat. We have not seen any COLA or anything like that for increase, but personnel costs have been increasing. So if the district has awarded COLA to all the staff and all these personnel funded through C program, they receive COLA too, and that's absorbed by C program. So this is the biggest challenge we see, that more and more personnel costs that's eating up the program overall funding. So we have come up with several solutions. One of them is a restructure. If we look at student services or instruction programs, if they no longer are needed or don't need as much, for example, as formerly assessment office, we transition those into Welcome Connect Center. And we house the student peer coaches there to support new initiatives. And we'll also refocus. We have a community of practice that in our institutional faculties, they work on when the basic skill was there program. So now this community of practice is shifted to discuss post AB 715. How do we support students? How do we eliminate equity gap? And the reimagine is to just look outside the C program itself to see what other funding sources are there that we can help scale up the best practices and to help students succeed. So the grants I mentioned, the program mentioned, the peer coaching, the re-entry program, they're all supported partially by the grant programs as well. So I think that's my last slide, and I thank you for the opportunity to share. If you have any questions, I'll stay later to the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Lee. We've now talked about the student-centered funding formula and the C program, and we're going to move on to our last presenters, which are going to talk about local goals and mapping presentations. So we're going to have Dr. Robert Pimentel, Vice President of Educational Services and Institutional Effectiveness at Fresno City College, and he's going to talk about aligning campus resources to an equity framework for student success. And then Dr. Brian Sanders, Vice President of Instruction at Columbia College. He led the process to revise Columbia College's educational master plan and strategic plan to align with the vision for success and other state initiatives. Using mind mapping software, Columbia College synthesized a large number of important initiatives into 6 streamlined strategic goals. So we're looking forward to hearing this, and I'm turning it over to Dr. Pimentel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us today. My name again is Robert Pimentel. I'm the Vice President of Ed Services at Fresno City College. We are located in the Central Valley. For those of you that don't know, we are considered probably one of the first colleges. We're an old institution. We've been here for over 100 years, and we plan to be here another 100, hopefully. Next slide, please. At the core of everything that we do here at Fresno City is our focus on student equity and success. We have had a real focus on the elimination of barriers for our students over the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years. What you see here is a statement that we have on our enrollment management plan. And it really does, highlight that we're not really focused on closing gaps. We really are focused on the elimination of barriers. We want to get to that point where our students from marginalized communities are performing just as well as students that are coming from the better communities in our area. Fresno City is located in one of the most impoverished areas of the valley. So we have to do equity work, and we have to do it right. So the intent, of course, also not it's for student success, but we also want to make sure that we're meeting the Chancellor's Office vision for success. And without the deep focus on our equity work, it would be really hard for us to get there. Next slide. Because we have a limited amount of time today, I decided that I was going to use an example rather than try to sit here and talk you through a process of the alignment of resources. What you see here is a clustering of our students, and this is again comes from our enrollment management plan. One of the things that we did was we clustered our students so that we focused on the student populations that we knew needed the most help. In our enrollment management plan, of course, we focus on all of our students, but we also know that there's pockets of students that really need a little bit more attention than the whole campus as a whole. So we want to focus on those. Here you could clearly see that the part-time students that are looking to get a degree or transfer, and the full-time students that haven't been here really long are the ones that are really struggling. So the focus of our enrollment management plan is on that. You might think, what does enrollment management have to do with anything on what we're talking about? But I wanted to really try to have something to show you how we align the resources. If we go to the next slide, please. Here you see an integrated planning crosswalk that we created for this plan. Here you see the goals that we have, and you see every single program or area that has a focus on accomplishing that same goal. One of the reasons that we did this was because we didn't want to be duplicating services, and we wanted to really map out everything that we have going on campus that is focused around the enrollment management plan. So you see here, we have guided pathways, we have our student equity and achievement plan, our strategic enrollment management plan, our Title V, and then it aligns to the funding formula. And in there you see the vision for success goals. If we go to the next slide, please. If you look at this is the continuation of that same crosswalk. And when we look at this, we can easily see everything that is happening on campus that's really helping us align the resources to meet those goals. Now, when we're looking at our entire campus as a whole, the goal is for us to have a crosswalk like this that would really highlight some of the things that we are doing as a campus to really align our funding structures and bring them all together. Fresno City is part of the pilot project, the report streamlining project. When we started doing that work, we started really thinking about how does every program really align to the vision for success, to our strategic plan, to our master plan, and how can we really capitalize on that to really achieve the goals of that vision for success that the Chancellor's Office set for us. So this is an example of something that we are working on with the campus as a whole, and for all of the projects, we decided that we were just going to align everything. So we have been talking and having discussions about the equity work that goes on in every single one of the programs that we have on campus. Every one of the areas that's working on different parts of the campus is a big campus. So one of the goals is to get to a point where we have a crosswalk just exactly like this, but that has the vision for success goals instead of those other programs up there, and really does the job that we intend to, to accomplish, is trying to look at the table that will a table or something that will tell, a document that will tell everybody on campus what activities are happening that are focused on student equity, first of all, because that's one of the things that we are focused on. And second, what is every single program doing so that there's no duplication of services. The next thing that we want to do is really align that to our funding formula, to the funding general fund, and for the categoricals and the grant projects that we have. How does everything come together to align to the vision for success? So one of the things that we are working on is with every single one of the campus directors that leads a categorical or a federal or a state funded project or a foundation project. We're working on something right now that looks just like this, where they will tell us what are their equity goals and how does the program align to the vision for success. One of the things that we also have been doing is really looking at how can we bring everybody together to achieve that one thing that we want to do, and that's the equity for all and elimination of barriers for everybody. So we have a really, again, we're really focused on the equity work on our campus and making sure that all of our students are successful. So this is just an example of something that could be probably pretty easily done for all of the projects, especially on the smaller campuses. Here, because we are such a large institution, it's really hard to capture every single one of the projects that we have going on. But we are working on developing a crosswalk that will tell us where everything is at and how everything is going. So the next slide is my contact information. If you have any questions about this or how you can get to this point, please feel free to reach out to me. And I'll pass it over to Dr. Sanders.
All right, well, thank you, Robert. I was just enjoying your presentation and thinking about how similar what you've done is to what Columbia College has done. You can kick over to the next slide. I wore my 50 shirt here. We're not 100 years yet, but we're a 50-year institution a couple of years ago at Columbia College. We're a small institution in Sonora, California, up the hill from the valley, but very much a rural institution. We have a large forest surrounding our campus. It's really an interesting, great place to work. So we took more of a visual understanding of things, and I really wanted to share that with you today as more of a concept. So mine isn't a big table of mapping like Robert's was. It's the same concept, but it's done in a different way. We sat back and looked at our small institution trying to deal with all of the different things from accreditation standards to vision for success, and we got C program, we've got strong workforce, we've got all of these things going on, and it's overwhelming for a small community. When we think about these though, there's a lot of overlap. Our little Venn diagram in the middle, there's these big things that we're striving for. The institution sets standards for the accreditation, vision for success goals, and institutional stability. And we have down below these contributors to that. And it helped us to really recognize that guided pathways is not itself an end, but it's the tool that helps us achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve. Same thing, a strong workforce program. It's trying to help us achieve our goals, and C program in achieving our goals. Click over to the next slide, please. Now, one of the other issues that we have as an institution is that we have programs that have their goals. We have college-wide goals, we have district goals, and we have state goals. And as a systems thinker, it's crazy if all of these things are different. What if we could set up something that would align our goals so that they're all pulling in the same direction? And really the essence of achieving your program goals means that you're achieving college goals. And then achieving the college goals means that you're achieving your district goals. And district goals achievement means that we're achieving those state goals. So click on over to the next slide. So I'm going to take controls here. This is a little picture. I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit dynamically using it's a PDF right now. But there's a software. I just posted into the chat this mind map software, and our research director put this together because we were talking conceptual, and he said, "Hey, Brian, let me do some work with that." And he came up with this crazy picture that I'm going to show you. And it's built on, I'll zoom in a little, it's built on the idea that down here we have all of these things we're trying to work towards. We have accreditation standards that we have to consistently maintain. The Accreditation Commission asks us to do institution set standards, which has both floor goals and stretch goals. We have the C program supported by Ed Code. We have AB 705, which is pulling us towards student success. We have the student-centered funding formula, which is funding us to arrive in these places. And we have the statewide vision for success goals, which were then translated into local vision for success goals. And we see those categories of completion and transfer and unit accumulation. Now, the more we look at what we do as institutions, the more I think that the vision for success is one of the most brilliant things that's come out of the chancellor's office in my decades in the system. It's that it really focuses us on what we're trying to do as a system. So let's just take this picture and we're going to kind of zoom back out a little bit. And in a mind mapping sense, what we're seeing here is that here's what I showed you earlier. And then let's look at this middle section. What is all of this blue? Well, if we think of the purpose of accreditation is to maintain stability for our system and our infrastructure, we really see that there's a lot, and these are accreditation standards is what these are. There's a lot of stability that comes to us from, maintaining our mission, and down in here, working on our resources in standard 3 and standard 4 and standard 2 about our academic programs. So that's one collection of things that we have to work on. But if we zoom out a little bit more, I zoomed out too far there. And we can come up into here, and now the color coding I showed you a second ago, and we're going to have some zoomed in pictures in just a second, but I want you just to look briefly at this color coding. And the brilliance of the Chancellor's Office plan, the vision for success, is that the goals that we've got in front of us really touch on all of these different plans. This is the same thing as Robert's table a minute ago. It's just that you can kind of see it in color. This, you can't see the font yet, I'll show you in a second, but increase award completion is associated with our accreditation set standards, and it's associated with the vision for success goals and our local goals. And so let's move back to the slideshow now. And I'll walk you through some of these pictures. There we go. Okay, so I showed you this picture. This is our overall look. Skip to the next slide, please. All right, so here's those color codes. This is a color coding map. So again, the standards from the bottom, we've got the vision for success in this blue purple color. The pink is our C program. The green is AB 705. So kick on over to the next one. And what we found was these tended to fall, this is our accreditation standards. One more slide over, please. These tended to fall into categories that aligned really well, the purple line across the middle, strategic imperatives, we called it, but it aligns really well with all the different things we're doing. We're trying to increase workforce readiness, that fourth one. We're trying to reduce equity gaps. We're trying to improve unit efficiency. That's funny, I left that there as a relic because that was my research nerd and me as a mathematician nerd using fancy words. We'll get back to how that changed later. Increasing award completion, increasing transfer readiness. Those are the big things we're trying to achieve. Click on forward. So there's our legend. You see how the colors correspond. Different initiatives are then falling within each of these categories. So here we are in increasing award completion, and you can see that we have institution set standards about award completion. We have C program is about award completion. We have the student-centered funding formula is funding us for every award that students complete. And over 5 years, we're trying to increase the number of students who are completing their associate degrees, credentials, et cetera, which we then break down into 3 college level goals. So there's one category. Next slide, please. The next slide shows this increasing transfer readiness as one of the big goals. And again, it's the set standards is asking us to look at that. The C program funds us for that, the vision for success goals. The next one that we wrote up there, the nerdy phrase, next slide, is the improving unit efficiency. And we don't need to get into all the details, but you can see all of these different categories, including really the AB 705 in the green. So that goal of improving unit efficiency is there. Next slide, please. And increasing workforce readiness. Now think about our whole strong workforce program. strong workforce is really about increasing workforce readiness. So all of the initiatives that we have are pulling us in that direction. And then next slide, please. And here's our last one, reducing equity gaps. This is the overarching goal. It's throughout all of the work that we do. So what we did at our college was we took these pictures, and like you're feeling right now, I'm sure, overwhelmed, right? There's a lot of words on the screen and there's pictures, but you just kind of think about the color schemes. What we're seeing is that there are these big themes. And what we've decided to do at Columbia College, if you just go to the next slide, is to tighten ourselves up. See, there's the colors, a little bit of color everywhere. I think the final one is our goals. We made, go ahead, forward, please. We decided to just create new strategic goals so that our goals are to achieve these things: increasing award completion, increasing transfer readiness, reducing barriers to completion. There's the reworded from our nerdy phrase, increasing workforce readiness, reducing equity gaps. And what about all of that accreditation stuff that was kind of in the middle of the picture? Well, we said that's all about institutional stability. And as an institution, you're all in this world of doing program review, and we're always supposed to cite how this thing we want to purchase or a person we want to hire helps us move towards our goals as an institution. Well, sometimes the goal is maintaining yourself. That's a very critical thing for us as an institution. And so in addition to the 5 that you saw on the other screens, we added this one about maintaining institutional stability so that we have a goal to remain strong where we're already strong. So this was just a visual tool. Again, I put the mind map software in there. If you want to look into that, we can check in on some details later on. So yep, get all our sled dogs pulling in the same direction, and we're going to achieve the goals. Thank you for your time. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Murillo.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're all aligned. I want to thank our panelists here today. It was inspiring to see the innovation and the different ways at coming at how you can align the formulas, the different funding mechanisms to really drive equity-centered achievement. And I think one of the points that Dr. Weiss made around, this is really what we want to do anyway. This is something that we believe in, is student success. So I think that's an important to note here. Also, some of the key takeaways today, really want to kind of go back over some of this because there were some very important points made. And I think one of them is that we really can improve our outcomes that affect the metrics of the student-centered funding formula. We can do things that will affect those outcomes. And by doing that, we're helping students. So thank you, Dr. Weiss and Yvonne, for your presentations on that. When we think about the C Success presentation that Lee presented to us, the program has supported students and especially disproportionately impacted student populations in equitable access and success. Again, a major area for community colleges because we are the most diverse of all of the higher education systems. Also, program evaluation is integral part of ensuring program effectiveness. You can't figure out how you're doing until you really evaluate what you're doing. And creative solutions and equity focus can help us overcome challenges in difficult times. So thank you, Lee, for providing us those insights today. Our local goals mapping by Dr. Pimentel and Dr. Sanders taught us some very good things about, and I just love one of the things that was said about key outcomes. But one of the things that we learned from them is our programs can use equity framework as they create activities to achieve the goals. So they did it in very different ways, and they both did a lot of the same kind of aligning. They use crossworks to identify what all programs are doing. and that it's important to avoid that duplication of services, that your campus and program budgets should align to your campus equity goals and vision for success, as was pointed out. Dr. Sanders noted that the vision for success is inherently brilliant. Really brought us down to 6 very clear goals, that it clears out the clutter of what so many different initiatives out there, that this is really the work we want to do, students completing their programs and moving forward successfully in their lives. That's what we're here for. The alignment between the Vision for Success goals and the ACCC-JC institution set standards are clear. They're done, and if you're done doing them carefully, you can rephrase your ISS and be your Vision for Success goals with both floor and stretch goals. So all of that alignment can occur as you do this program. And by the way, I can't wait to check out that mind mapping program, Dr. Sanders. And our other programs, such as Strong Workforce Program and the Student Equity Achievement Program, are tools to use in the pursuit of the Vision for Success. And Brian left us with this last little point that I think is important. Point yourself toward the Vision for Success and use the tools to help you get there. So you've seen some examples of how you can use the student-centered funding formula, C funding, and other funding to drive equity-centered achievement. And we hope you've learned something being with us today. And it looks like we have time to open up to question and answers. So if we have any questions.
Dr. Murillo, I don't see any questions, but I had an add-on. I don't want to take away the joy of the Chancellor's Office and the Foundation from sharing this, but I saw a really awesome presentation to our CIO board just yesterday from the Community College Foundation about how they're going to change some of our reporting on all of the different plans that we do so that it points and unifies and tightens things up and points them towards the vision for success as well. It would really build on that work that Robert, Fresno City College, that we've done, each of the institutions has done, and focuses, like you were saying, on those big goals, trying to achieve the vision for success goals, and everything else comes along the way. So just a hint that great things are to come on that.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great to hear, because I know they've been working on that for a while. So good. And I'm sure Lizette heard that and will pursue that a little further. Any other comments from our panelists or some questions from our attendees here today? I know we've been answering the questions as they've been coming up. So no, got all the information you need. Okay, I'll look at our panelists and ask if you want to make any closing comments, because we do have that time.
There's a couple of questions appearing now.
Oh, okay, good. All right, there we go. All right, so we have a question. I'm interested in Lee's Collier's large group of 30 members. How hard was it to achieve and manage? Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, I guess when you heard me saying the 30 plus members, you guessed it. It has been very challenging to coordinate that many people and then also different perspectives and different point of views, and depending on where they come from, which areas to work for. But it's also a blessing because we have that diverse point of views. So in the last few years, this Integration Success Committee have been looking at overall how the C program doing, but also we have been organizing ourselves into what we call action teams. The action research that we focus on each year and say, we think this area needs more focus. We want to dive deeper into this issue and what can we do? Like this year, we have several teams. One is to look at part-time students, what they specific need. As we know, most of colleges, majority, if it's not 75% like our college, probably 2/3 or more than at least more than half students are less than full-time, right? Below 12 units. So we look at the data comparing in that C website that I dropped into the chat box there. You could see there is a one on the research and data. We have a team specific working on that. What kind of barriers part-time students face more? So we're doing that kind of research. And the other question we come up with was, well, seems like programs impact students' persistence and completion, but why are some of the students not participating, right? How do we invite them in? So we're looking at that one. So the angles like that with the big group, once we break into smaller 3 teams, it has been the norm for us usually in the last few years. And that actually gives a nice size of people that who can dive into those data. And then we research and we come up with the possible solutions. And we have a big support from our institutional research office as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
I better unmute myself. Thank you very much, Lee. Appreciate that. So we have a question from Lindsay Weiler. I know there is focus for setting students up for the in-demand jobs, but what about those students who might be pursuing other goals, not just those qualified in demand? Would like one of our college participants like to answer that?
Grab it if no one else. Our goal is to help students achieve their goals. So if they come to us and they want to be a very specific thing, we mark it as a success when they've transferred on and become a student in that program, or if they've gotten their career in that program. So, whether it's in demand or not, we can certainly put more resources using strong workforce funding, for instance, into an in-demand field. But we continue to have very special programs at our institutions across the state to point students towards what their goals are.
Any other comments on that? No? Good. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to the question from Zita Melton. And she said, did your colleges create a task force to complete your mapping work? Was it collaborative across administration, faculty, students, and classified? Did it cross student services and instruction lines? And please describe a bit more of the process and how long it took.
I could try to answer that. We actually did. We created a task force, and it went through constituency review. So we did cross student services and instruction lines. My position is a little odd because I'm right in the middle. So I do both. I do student services and instruction. So I get to talk to both VPs. But it was a task force that we had our equity director, we had all of the vice presidents involved as we did the mapping in our institutional research office. Once that was completed, then it went for constituency review for people to review it. The one that we're working on right now for our report streamlining, where we're going to do the same thing. We're involving all of the directors, and they go across student services and instruction. That will go through constituency review as well. So yes, everybody needs to be involved.
Okay, thank you. Dr.
Yeah, on our end, it was kind of a brainstorming session. And so I was conceptually talking about something with our researcher, and he went and grabbed the resources, the documents, the standards, and those kinds of things, and then did some work in his office. And he kind of crawled into a hole and had to look at all of these things together. It's this huge puzzle. It's not really a groupthink activity on that front end of it. Then he brought it back to me, and we looked at it together. And what you saw was screenshots, but in the mind map software, he was able to grab something and drag it somewhere else and put it into different groupings and rename things. And it was a very dynamic process. Then we went into our Institutional Effectiveness Council, and we did the same exercise there. We presented the basic ideas and pretty thoroughly walked through what we thought was happening and got some input from everybody, and came up with that collection of suggested standards or goals for the institution. And then we went to our other councils. We did the traveling roadshow. We met with the Student Success Council and with College Council and gave them a brief presentation, told them what we were thinking, asked for their input, and eventually came to a really strong consensus that that was the direction that we wanted to go, was that, because it came down to it. What's our strategic goals going to be? Those 6 statements, yes. But it was very collaborative. But again, it started with some people. I mean, I see the whiteboard on the wall behind Robert. That's kind of the same tool. You just get back there and you start piecing stuff around. It's an exploratory project.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to ask panelists one. Oh, looks like I have another one from Simon Moore. There's quite a bit of planning, goal setting, and visions happening on the administrative level. How can we be more assertive about increasing the awareness of the valuable community college programs available to current and recent high school graduates? Anybody like to take this one?
It kind of reminds me, I'll talk a little bit of, once in a while I'll tell people, I just really hate the word just. I'm just going to the local junior college, that, you know, in that sentence. And you're kind of asking in my mind, how do we get rid of that word just and make it, I'm going to the X college, and it's real college. And it's a not a just sort of thought process. So, I mean, we're doing a lot of storytelling in our marketing, featuring students and their stories and how they've overcome obstacles and that sort of thing on one level of our marketing, as one way of trying to, and then showing where they're going, and then even, you know, finding our local leaders. So many of our local leaders started at the community college, so featuring them, you know, when they're higher in their careers. So I think it's a long process. And then we're also doing a lot of work with our high school counselors to, so much of that just idea is passed through the local counselors of, you know, I think it's getting less, but, you know, the idea that, well, you're the type of student that should go to a UC, you know, but these other ones, they can just go, you know, that kind of a mindset. So working, and then I'll share one more story and then I'll be quiet. We're one of the 15 pilot colleges for a baccalaureate degree. And I've seen, you know, when we explained that program to our local high school counselors, they're like, okay, so they go there and you get a CSU degree. No. Shasta College is awarding a 4-year degree. Shasta College is a 4-year college now? And, you know, it's just a small program in our, but it's kind of elevating. So if this statewide baccalaureate bill, allowing more colleges to do it, it can be a way of elevating, even if it's just a small portion of what we do. I don't think it should be the main thing what we do, but it can help elevate that conversation. So that's my perspective.
I also would like to add our dual enrollment work that we've been doing has been really important, and on how we highlight, you know, Dr. Wise made a really good point. We do have to educate our high school counselors on that community colleges are just as valuable as any other institution, and to stop pushing students where they may not be ready to go, or not because they're not academically ready, but because they, you know, for family reasons or whatever, you know, they could always come to us and we will treat them just as well, if not better, and send them on their way to the university eventually. So the dual enrollment work that we're doing, we're up to over 5,000 students in our area, and we use that platform to really educate students on what to expect when they get here and what kind of programs are available to them for additional assistance.
Thank you.
If it's okay, Dr. Murillo, I think I can add to that, just given some of the preliminary findings we've been hearing from parents of color, particularly around dual enrollment, but I think a lot of what we've heard from both students and parents is applicable to other opportunities that are available at our community colleges. And for them, it seems like that partnership between the high schools and the community colleges is really important in both who provides them that information, right? So to the point that everyone made, through counselors, through faculty, and then also having liaisons between the community colleges and their high school counterparts, whether that be a student service personnel. I think what we've heard from both parents and students as far as gaining awareness about the opportunities at the local community colleges, they seem to want to have a lot more dissemination of that information, both like in languages that are easily accessible to parents. So particularly around like the Latinx student community in Spanish, right? And then also being able to both access that information, but have deeper understanding of what those opportunities lead to. And so that's definitely come up for us. I feel like I had one other thought and it completely slipped my mind. Community-based organizations. We've seen that a lot of community-based organizations that serve to help those students really pipeline from their high schools into 4 years or into community colleges often serve as a really great place to have folks from either institutions communicate with them and communicate that information out to their families.
Terrific. Thank you for adding that in. Okay.
Marina, I can also add a little bit to
good.
the partnership between high school and the colleges. It started from like 2017 since we had a big fire in Santa Rosa and our enrollment has been declining. And then the following years we had more of fire and situations. So we have people moving out of the county, but our strong outreach team at our college has really been doing an excellent job. They invite people in and when they go out. We have a college night, we have a high school counselor events, conferences, and to share the information with them. And we also send the teams going out to the high schools to help high school students to register, apply and register, things like that. So with their efforts, the yield curve, the percent of high school students attending our college has actually been going up. So that really helped to soften the blow of the enrollment decline for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I have 2 more questions and then a comment up there. And we're running about 8 minutes to when you're going to go to breakout groups. So Purvi Rami asked, how do we bring in the non-credit side of community colleges into this work? So open that up to our panel for more discussion.
Non-credit programs, non-credit short-term workforce training. There's all sorts of things. What we have to do, I think, is honestly, I'm a mathematician, right? I was trained as a curriculum committee member to think in terms of 3-unit classes. And we have to pull ourselves away from that and think differently and use our strong workforce resources as one of a series of those to do things differently. One of the pieces that I've been encouraging is for us to develop a repository of non-credit training tools, though, so that my little college in the middle of the foothills doesn't have to make those all up from scratch because somebody's already done that work in our system. So is there a way for us to drop into the CID, this common identifier setup that we have in our system for transfer general education classes and for some of our credit vocational, the X-coded community college system? Maybe there's a way for us to do a non-credit spectrum of offerings there that we can more easily grab onto and offer. But we also have to keep in mind that when you do a non-credit program, you end up with a non-credit degree, and that's just a fact. You get a certificate, but it's not units, right? So that's just hard for us to wrap our heads around. But the value to the person may be just as great in their career advancement as a credit certificate does. An example being maybe you have a non-credit program as an EMT. You're still going to get into that ambulance or onto that fire truck, and you're going to be off into a high-paying, very rewarding career based on that educational pathway.
Thank you. Any other comments on this one?
I can add a few words to that. I think the persistence, because often, as Dr. Sanders was saying, we have to bring the awareness of non-programs value to the awareness of the college and the community. And at our college, I would say we have been strengthening the non-credit resources. after I went to the college, I started to look at how we can build up a strong team to support those programs. Non-credit, we offering English learners, workforce preparation, and so on. It's very popular, but traditionally we had a very few resources going there. And we're gradually changing that. A few years ago, when the non-credit recipe came along, we were able to add to the team members, and that's we can have people, staff specific help students from applying. They need a lot of hand-holding, right? And the outreach, doing the community outreach and so on. And also we keep bringing the value back to the college as well. We do periodic presentation to the board, and we talk about that at our integrated student success. We always say, what about non-credit students? So that it doesn't get dropped off the radar. So I think persistence makes it work.
Okay, thank you. I've got one more question and then a comment, and then I'm going to close this up. So, and it's not a silly question, would be around how would a faculty member approach administration for funding gaps that they see in equity? And that's from Lindsay Weiler. Any comments on that?
Well, I've been looking at that question, and it takes someone with courage is what it comes down to. And every program that's going on in our system right now that's highly successful has happened because of faculty champions have stepped up to make it happen and have said, hey, there's a problem here. You know, there's places that all of us have blind spots. We just don't even see that there's an issue going on there. How do you see that something is not happening? How do you see a group of people that are under the radar anyway, because they're a minority group and they're feeling not a part of the institution? If you see something and you draw it to the attention of those in positions to, you know, steer conversations, that's really what we need. Sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 taps on the, you know, the window glass to kind of get someone's attention, but do it. And as faculty members, you're very thorough also. Use those skills. See the picture, think about the purpose, think about the goals of the institution, and kind of frame it out. You make a strong reasoned argument, it's almost impossible to say no.
I would agree with Dr. Sanders, and all of our equity efforts on campus have pretty much been driven by our faculty members, and we do have a director of student equity and achievement, but he is very focused on working with faculty and the campus community as a whole, of course, but the majority of the things that we've been doing on campus is really changing mindsets and really working with our faculty and our staff. But faculty champions have made it work, and it's because they came to ask. You know, they've always been the ones that are tapping on my shoulder. Hey, I need more money for this. I need more funding for that. You know, we're lucky enough to be a large institution, and our dollars are a little bit more than some of the smaller colleges, but you have to get creative with your funding when you're at a small, I was at a small college for 18 years, and you have to get very creative when you're at a smaller college. So that's one thing to understand as well. You know, if you come to your vice president and they have a small budget, you know, where can you carve out some money? Because equity work is something that's really important to us. So we will probably find the funding somewhere.
Thank you. Okay, we're down to 2 minutes, so this is going to be rapid fire. All right, you know what rapid fire is here. So I'm going to ask every one of our panelists, and I'm going to start with Yvonne, to give us one piece of advice for our attendees on how to use funding structures to drive equity-centered student success.
Yeah, I think I just want to reiterate what I had mentioned, both what we've heard from parents, from students, about really considering their perspectives and asking them about what their needs are and the ways in which we can best align all of our different activities to really serve those students in the best ways that they see fit.
Thank you. Lee?
I would like to say, continue to work on building a culture of student-centeredness and equity-minded into everyday work.
Thank you. Joe?
I go back to if you keep the student success at the forefront of your decision making, it turns out well in the end for your budgeting.
Thank you. Dr. Pimentel?
The focus on equity has to happen, whether at a small scale or large scale. I mean, college. If you're a small college or a large college, you have to really focus on your equity efforts. Just to give an example, our graduation rates grew, even though we are down 20% on our enrollment this year. The graduation grew by 400 this year. So our equity work is making a difference on our campus. So I would imagine it would make a difference and everywhere throughout the state and the United States. So keep a focus on your equity work.
Thank you. Dr. Sanders.
More completion means more money. That's what it comes down to. If you structure your programs carefully, you can actually have maybe a payment in year 1 for a student getting 9 units of credit, year 2 for completing a certificate, or maybe year 1, a short-term certificate, and in year 2, they're getting their associate degree. Structure your goals for students that drive towards completions, help your students reach their goals, and as soon as they reach their goals, you get money for it that you can use to fund more success for more students. That's how it works.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I can't say enough about keep your eye on the student. We need to be student ready. And that as a community college system and really help our students achieve their dreams. So we want to thank our panelists here today. We've done an amazing job of invigorating us into funding, which is not always our most favorite subject, right? But students are, right? So thank you again for your participation. And there are 3 breakout groups, and I believe Dr. Martinez is going to explain that.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo, and thank you again to all the panelists for engaging us in this important conversation. And I did hear somebody mention, the courage it takes, right, to do this work. So if you've missed out on the Courageous Leadership webinar series, I want to redirect you to the Vision Resource Center, where we've had 3 colleges speak about this, and specifically also faculty and how they've been able to align and work with administrators to lead this work around equity. So check those out if you haven't had a chance to do that. And then next slide, please. And we will go into our networking time. So as we transition to our networking time, I just want to say we've developed 3 topic areas for you to choose from. The first one being around student-centered funding formula, the second one, student equity and achievement funding, and then lastly, mapping budgets to your local goals. So feel free to use the time to share ideas and connect with colleagues across the state. Next slide, please. So now in order to join the breakout room, you'll need to return to the Summit Agenda webpage. And if you don't know how to do that, we're going to drop the link in the chat box. You can just click on that and then scroll to the topic of your choice and click on the link. So you'll be placed into a breakout room with approximately 10 of your peers to begin your discussion. So again, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you'll join us again next Thursday. And this breakout room, just a reminder, it will close around 4:05. But of course, if you have to leave earlier, that is fine. But we hope that you will take advantage of the breakout rooms. Thank you so much again for joining us, and have a good day.